Kicks 105.5 WKXH. Good morning, I'm JJ. It is Wednesday, August 31st. It's 7:48. Currently 65 degrees outside. I'll have your full weather forecast coming up in just a little bit, but right now we're going to talk with Mike Barrett from the Barrett Insurance Agency. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning.
And how are we?
Not bad. Cooler than yesterday, you know?
It is a little bit cooler.
Not
We
too
got
bad.
some rain coming. Did you get a chance to go to the fair?
You know, I'm really bummed. This year I wanted to go. I go every year, and my wife made all these plans and forgot the fair was coming. so we missed it, which bummed me out tremendously because I know my son would have had a great time, and I heard it was a record attendance on Saturday, so good for them. Or was it Sunday? It was like a really good weekend
Sunday.
for the fair.
I went for the Derby. There was standing room only.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good for them.
It was packed.
Yeah, I missed my favorite food, and my son missed the rides, but we had a lot of stuff we had to do. We had to go do stuff for my wife's grandmother and go to a friend's birthday party and do all these things that were planned, and so I missed out. Dang it.
Dang it.
But I'm 10 pounds the same as I was Friday because I would have gained 10 pounds.
But we got the Lancaster Fair coming up.
I might have to head out there, too.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, you might have to appease the children.
Yes, absolutely. Keep the happy kid. So
what are we going to talk about this morning?
for good policies today, what I thought we would do is talk about personal property. Personal property on a homeowner's policy, personal property on a renter's policy. There's extensions of coverage on those. Okay, so extensions of coverage from a homeowner policy will start there. Let's say we're going to do simple math this morning because my brain can't take much more than simple math this morning. So if we have $200,000 coverage on our house, our dwelling, automatically with most companies, and the percentages can vary ever so slightly depending on who you're with, but usually the percentage that's automatic as a determining factor for the limit of coverage that you'd have as a maximum limit for personal property is either 50 or 70% of the $200,000. Okay, so let's say it's 70%. So you have $140,000. That is your maximum limit of personal property coverage. If your house was to burn to the ground, the most you would get would be a $140,000. You wouldn't necessarily just get a check for $140,000, but you would get up to that limit as you start replacing your items that you lost. All right, that's also going to come into play for smaller claims for personal property as well. But this morning, the focal point is taking that $140,000 personal property limit that you have and seeing how that applies elsewhere. So let's say you have a camp, whether it be a hunting camp, camp on the waterfront, just a camp to get away from it all, whatever the case may be. I've seen many people do this over the years where they have a separate policy that covers their camp, right? So the building is covered by a separate policy, but maybe they're relying on the personal property from their homeowner policy to extend over to that camp. Can they do that?
I don't know.
Well, we're about to find out, aren't we? So if you have a camp and you decide, you know what, I don't want any personal property coverage on this specific camp policy, I'm going to rely on what I have for personal property from my primary homeowner policy. Now, that's going to give you up to 10% because the policy reads they will cover up to 10% of your personal property limit at other locations that you own, occupy, or rent. All right, so you're going to have up to 10%, so up to $14,000 in this particular case. That would have as a maximum limit if you had items at your camp that were lost in a fire or damaged in any other covered peril under the policy. The kicker, though, is there are some limitations, all right? So if you have a camp and you're depending on that 10% limit from your homeowner policy and somebody comes and robs you blind at the camp, do you know that if you're not staying at the camp at the time, many companies have a specific exclusion saying they don't cover that?
Really?
Yeah. That's why it exists.
Messed up.
It is messed up, right? An appropriate response, my friend. So you do open yourself up to, I tell people all the time, the worst word in my industry is gray, right? We want to make sure we're washing the gray away, to quote an old commercial. So the best thing to do isn't necessarily to depend on personal property extending from your homeowner to your secondary property, whatever it may be, because how much money are you really saving? And you have some gray areas, right? So maybe it's better to put personal property coverage on the policy for the camp so that you have that. Maybe it's better to put liability coverage on the camp because you can put it specifically on there as well. Weigh your options on your coverages. You may find it's very incidental price-wise, maybe $100, $200, $300 a year, which I know is not cheap, but And if it's a way for you to prevent having a surprise, finding out that maybe you have coverage that's not going to be triggered because of an exclusion on the policy, or a limitation on the policy is probably in a more appropriate way to describe it. How does personal property work when you're somewhere else? Let's say I'm on vacation. Somebody steals my luggage. I would have coverage up to my 10% because you do have worldwide coverage for liability and contents. But it's when you have a property that you own, occupy, or rent more on a permanent basis that can have some of those limitations. So the kids going off to school, living in a dormitory type of thing, they're going to have coverage. You're going to have coverage if you're on your cruise, or if you're at a hotel, or if you're at Disney World, or visiting family and God knows where, wherever you have family. You shouldn't necessarily run into those issues, but there are always little bits and pieces that you want to be aware of so that you're not caught off guard. And the final real big thing this morning with personal property is, don't think that if you have a $140,000 limit that, again, they would cut you a check. If your house burns to the ground, you're not just getting a check for $140,000. There is a process of you replacing your personal property. So they give you what we call an actual cash value basis, where they say, okay, well, we'll give you $90,000 to start replacing these items. Here you go, based on this list that you provided us. And as you start physically replacing them, they start making up and giving you the replacement cost on it, and the maximum limit, again, would be the 140. So it's quite a process.
All right, so that generated a question.
All right.
And maybe you'll have an answer.
Maybe not. We'll see.
What about stuff, personal items that are not like, maybe heirlooms or family photos, or stuff that you actually
can't
ever replace?
Yeah, there's no value on those, right? That's hard. There's really not going to be a way for you. For a family heirloom, that kind of is a little bit different. But if you're talking photos and things that you've just had over the years, you're not going to ever be able to replace those, right? For a family heirloom, maybe you got a bureau that's been handed down, or a bed frame that's been handed down, or a vase, or some kind of specific item, a quantable item that's right there. It's going to have a value that may be needing to get an appraisal where you'd want to specifically list it. Otherwise, it's just going to be what it is. The best example I can give is, let's use, I'm trying to think of, you got the people out there who are collecting items. Let's say you have this nice collectible vase. Let's use that. That seems like a good one. And the vase is valued on the marketplace for $2,000 because of the historic value, or who made it, or where it came from. Well, in the eyes of insurance, it's just a vase. You know what I mean? Yeah. Oh, I saw your eyes.
So you got to get an appraisal.
So you want to get an appraisal, and for items that have a specific value that is more than what it might be. Collectible guns are like this as well. Jewelry. We've gone all over that pretty reasonable recently. You want to have an appraisal specifically list those items, so that you can make sure you're seeing out of it what the value really is. So worthy of a conversation if you have items that are in that heirloom or collectible stage, that you should have a conversation with your agent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. That was interesting.
I try.
Very
pretty good when I come in and go, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, I don't know. I have no clue what we're going to talk about today.
Or his go-to answer, insurance.
We're going to talk insurance today. Well, that's always going to be the answer. I'm always going to be right when I say that. So.
All right, well, thanks for coming in, Mike. If anybody has any insurance questions or wants to reach out to you, how can they do that?
So simple. Give us a call, 748-5224. Find us on Portland Street in St. Johnsbury. Online, thebarrettagency.com. Google, Facebook, and YouTube. Just look for Barrett Insurance Agency.
Well, thank you again so much for coming in, and
thank you.
I'll see you at the Lancaster Fair.
We'll see.
We'll see. All right, Mike Barrett from the Barrett Insurance Agency, everybody, right on Portland Street, right here in St. Johnsbury. That's just by the bridge as you're coming from East St. J. Okay, or right after the bridge if you're coming across from Dunkin' Donuts. And we will talk with Mike again next week right here on Kicks 105.5.